Hi, this is very first video for this year. Happy New Year! All the time, all the best. Wish you all the best. So, we have the how do you think the importance of the mental health. So I try to read out loud for the whole video on the YouTube and try to consume it, but because he speaks so fast, so I need to slow down the speed. Maybe is the playback speed into the 0.8. Okay, let's get started. Mental models are powerful. There are some successful in the worst way by mental model. Mental models are basically simplified representation how the world works. You take something very complicated, you simplify thing into the framework that you can use for decision making, decision and problem solving. For example, mental model that I really love around decision making is the expected value model. This model say that instead of thinking decision as being good or bad decisions, you think about a decision that having a set of positive and negative consequence, and we should make decisions that give us a repeated high probability of winning of average over the long term rather than just one-off. I think this is a great mental model. My teacher the fortunate work with is such a useful model that is become standard in a lot of fields revolving around decision making and properly like trading, finance, and professor like poker even. So in this video, I'm going to share with you the six of my favorite mental model, but they aren't just regular model. These six are very special mental models. In fact, one of my favorite books of all time is probably this one. Is 50 models for strategic thinking. But here's the thing that I observed after teaching mental model to so many people, what I realized that mental models are not enough. Regardless of actual model that you use, the way that you apply your context and knowledge and situation to the model can make or break how the fact this is. For example, I previously worked with data scientists for this large e-commerce business, and they try to make a decision which email campaign to use. So by looking past data, he estimates the probability of making certain amount of money to a campaign to decide that campaign is the one, and higher probability of delivering higher profit than campaign B. So they went with campaign A. They a lot of money. They lost a lot of money. The issue wasn't just luck. The issue was just the past data he was looking at in the holiday season, and the way that campaign performed in holiday season was different how it's performed in the off season. So even though he will apply expectation model, he just missed entire factor. In entire variable would change either quite completely. This actually the reason why he reached out to me in the first place, because it seemed like an impossible problem. How do you know what you don't know? Yes, you got a model. Yes, you got your knowledge. How do you know you apply the model in the right way and you don't have? In this aspect is what I want to focus on in today's video. The six mental model I'm going to give you. I'm not just regular model because they what I call meta models. They are the mental model that you should apply whenever you use any other form of mental model. Then the first mental model is called non-linearity. The example I gave before, non non-linearity. The example I gave before that scientist, the mistake fundamentally he made that he believed that the certain campaign, so let's say this campaign is called A, leads to a certain level of profits or certain level of result, whereas campaign B lead in different kind of results. So this is example linear logic or linear thinking, where we say A lead to result number 1 and B lead to result number 2. But in the real life relationship in a logic, it rarely linear. In the real life, it's not like this. It's more like A and B influence each other in the presence of C under condition of D, which also relate to E. And all of these things combined when going through F leads to a certain type of result. And so raise it is an incentive for our brain, for the human brain, to try to find some implicity, to find easiest way to understand something, and right tempting to see relationship and logic in linear, but this is the true nature of relationship or logical how things actually work. And any attempt to turn this into something that linear, something actually going incorrect, something matter of non-linearity means that by default you should assume that relationships are not one-to-one and linear, and you should assume that anything that complex and multifactorial is non-linear. That means that thinking about that season order problem, you actually want to cast your shell in linear thinking. So this is your takeaway. First of all, detect and be wary of linear thinking patterns. As you're thinking through a problem or decision to make, if you notice that you're thinking very linear way, that one-to-one relationship, if I do this, it will lead to this. Whereas I do this, it will lead to this. If I want to achieve a certain result, I need to make sure I do this, and then I do this, and then I do this, and then I do this. That kind of pattern of thinking very fake, legit, and more likely inaccurate. So catch yourself when you're thinking this way and challenge yourself to think more non-linearly. The great exercise for it is actually try to map out the relationships between the different factors or different variables as a part of your problem or your decision. The complicated decision or complicated problem is not complicated because the universe deemed it so. Because in order to achieve the certain result, there are so many different factors that these factors all relate to each other. If that complicated web or of interaction that makes something complicated or difficult in first place. So what people try to do when it's so difficult to think about this, if I still want to achieve just result, the easier way to just not think about it at all and oversimplify with linear thinking, that is not going to be effective for guaranteeing your result. Obviously, and you fall in this trap, and all hundred of different mental models that you could use in solve problem. You're not good with one in the most a process for this. You cannot think, hi, because I'm simplify this issue, I can use this mental model and give me a nice clean result that I could rebound. Maybe the talk you deeper from problem, you rely mental model concept for is being applied to forcibly. Maybe another model you can use instead. Again, the mental model is there as a tool. Help you make decision and simplify something that complicated. But in the order for them that model you give useful output, it depends on the input we think is relevant to give it. So the activity that actually deliberately sitting in mapping out all the different variables that we think create this complexity is an silent exercise. So we try to map out the relationship. The first step is just to list out every variable that you literally dump them out, literally that you think could be useful and relevant thinking about problem, and you go through this, try to see how these things influence each other, how they connect us. The marketing campaign example, maybe some word like the type of audience, the timing, the seasonality of the campaign, the different channels of distribution, the actual contents of campaign itself, the offer and the perceived value of the campaign, size of the audience. Okay, whereas in the audience like demographics, maybe the tag attribute term, how good your data tracking and how reliable. Bunch of different words represent the factor that make decision about which campaign is going more profitable. And so look at this, there are a lot of possible relationship. Like we know that the audience demographic resonate with particular type offer, but we know that the timing of seasonality also influence the perceived value of the offer, and also we know that the content of the campaign itself is going to frame that offer in certain way. That content obviously it depends on the timing in the seasonality. The audience also sit within certain type channel like some verify whether some people on the TikTok versus some people on the favor term of how profitable in Thai thing actually which have a part of this campaign. Well, that is also going to depend on the audience that side well as you order. So that's a very example just so you can see the a lot of different other ways you could arrange this, just one example. But then you go through this just by going through this process of thinking what important and how it all relate together, and what is the factor that is fully profitability that is completely forgotten about entire variable which are not a cost to run the campaign, and as soon as we add this additional cost, we think, okay, now with that make difference because different channel have different costs and different auto graphics and more cost too. And we're now seeing the complexity of a decision. When we get to so many arrows going to everywhere, what happened? We look all this and we say, okay, this is the result what we want, and it all the stuff that makes it complicated. So delusion here not to say, well, ignore this because it's too hard to think about. It's go to the process of trying to think about it. We can gain more clarity and organization about the complex thing, because we think more about the complicated part help us unwrap this. And over time, it's become easier and more intuitive for understand what contributes to the problem being actually solved and getting result what we want. and reason I recommend doing the mapping activity and the key takeaway to actually try to challenge yourself to do this and feel that complexity and feel that mental burden. If you try to make a complex decision or solving complex problem and you don't see how the piece fit together, you're going to have to pay consequence of that through the quantity of your decision making. And again, this basically a expected value thing. You may get lucky. You may be able to ignore that and make a certain decision. You get lucky with that decision one or two times, but you continuously make decision and solve problem in that way, ignoring the complexity and oversimplify things. Your luck eventually run out and make it important and costly. It only takes 2 or 3 times of getting a negative result to undo all the positive that you stacked previously. It's much faster and cheaper to get feedback on how good your decision is likely to be by doing this activity in seeing how much you struggle. If you struggle with mapping things out and seeing how all fit together, it means it's not organized and your brain, if you don't really understand how it all connects. If you did understand it, you would find easy to do. And someone feeling overwhelmed with the decision, overwhelmed with the problem, they're not sure where to start, they know the different moving pieces, they all relate to another completed way. They don't know what to prioritize, they don't know more decision. I guarantee every single of those instances that person is going to struggle in map things out. And when you sit down for yourself to address that weakness head on, that is when you start that's the time you start creating clarity of your decision making. That is what allows complicated problem to broken down into simpler components. So just remember, linear thinking is illusion that brain look for the shortcut, probably not accurate. Non-linear relationships that the truth, that reality. You struggle thinking in terms of reality. The question left for you, are you willing to either take the risk of being wrong with maybe okay in some situation, or would you rather do the hard work or trying to organization game class, trying to organizing the gain clarity? So that is first meta model, that meta, you see what I mean. Any framework you use, any method you use, go think about how to apply my concept and my knowledge, my situation to the mental model. You need to start from the position where you recognize the non-linearity of what's going on. Otherwise, the way your mental is going to be wrong, and the next mental very similar. And the next is similar to the idea of non-linearity. Linearity is idea of great thinking. When I work with software engineers, especially tech leads, one of the biggest problems that they face is whether move fast or to maintain quality. So when you move fast, pushing new feature all the time, increase the error rate, and a lot of things, technical debt are built up. Whereas if you're trying to maintain the quality, it reduces the agility, the new feature earthquake that they could impact the overall business. And so to resolve this, some mental model that seen as software energy could be around the decision of should we move fast or should we maintain quality. That a lot of framework or mental frameworks and mental model that may use to balance that decision, but actually find the model would be incorrect. It would be wrong to use this model because that and the example of falling into the trap of black and white thinking that opposed to gray thinking. Black and white thinking is either A or B, that the two things are polar opposite to mutual exclusive of each other. Just like how it's rare thing to have the one-to-one relationship over here, it's very rare in real life for a thing to be so black and white. Most things are on a continuous scale. Most of the best solutions are in the gray area in between. By the way, I know some of the comment is this spell G-R-A-Y, G-R-E-Y, depending on country you live in. So back to the software examples, you can move fast with a good deployment pipeline with QA processes while maintaining quality. You can try to balance both the things. So you can see the task thinking of term of gray. That means other type of mental model may be more suitable. The problem is not should we maintain quality, but just should we go fast. In understanding that what part of going far leads to the reduction of quality, how can we maintain quality in a lean, agile way without sacrificing speed? What a more model of thinking that allow us to increase speed and increase quality. And the reason with bias towards black and white thinking by default is very similar with reason why we toward linear thinking by default as well, because cognitive shortcut is like not a cognitive shortcut, cognitive emotion shortcut. It much simpler, it much easier, it much less overwhelming to assume that hey, it's really complicated thing with all the different factors that it's a one-to-one linear relationship. Likewise, it's the same thing say, hey, there's a really complicated decision. It's easier to say either E or B is simplify our decision. It creates an illusion of implicity, but doesn't show what's in logic and reasoning study. It called a false dichotomy. A dichotomy is when seeing is two different things, and for dichotomy saying we basically split aside two different factors as being mutually exclusive from each other when each other don't have to be. And some takeaway for this. In a similar way, catch yourself on black and white thinking. A bit about that you don't actually have to understand the gray first. It's enough to recognize the red flag of something being very black and white. The best example that I can lay top of my head that is truly a conversation is pretty actually ready on YouTube strategists who actually review that one.